think about when you celebrate at a wedding and you're drinking and how you feel the next day when you wake up. Like, how is that good? Like, we're literally being conditioned to poison ourselves.
Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. It's John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in to another Inspired Conversation. And we're back with the secret world of herbs. And you know, this is a series that I look forward to every single time. Today, well, surprise, surprise, we're going to talk about a very triggering subject that many people have lots of opinions about and lots of strong feelings about, but we're going to do it anyway. That's what we do here. So please welcome with me the wonderful, one and only herbalista herself, Jane Barlow. It's so good to see you, my friend.
Oh, thank you, John. It's good to see you too. An interesting conversation for an herbalista.
Yes.
A good one.
So we're going to talk about booze.
We're going to talk about booze.
Yeah. Well, you know, we full disclosure, like buried lead, we both are not in the norm when it comes to booze. We're not sort of like average when it comes to alcohol, and our opinions aren't average. But you know, why did you feel it was a good time to talk about it? Like you said, and Christine too, you said, I think this might be a good time to talk about booze.
Well, I have an interesting story that I can share, but I also a personal story. But I also think that with the massive rise in consciousness and the desire for people to be on a higher timeline, to be on an ascension path, to really, come here for what their soul came here for, that alcohol does not play a part of it, because even one glass of wine, one beer, it lowers your consciousness. And to me, this is, I drank alcohol for 30 years after not drinking it for 34 years. So I was alcohol free until I was 34. And now I'm alcohol free and have been for almost 2 years. So I think that the difference I've noticed is I just think it's a really important thing to talk about, because you can't cover, it's like not being able to cover up a bad diet by just taking a bunch of supplements. It's exactly like that. You can't raise your consciousness if your health, or keeping your brain healthy, whatever it is that you need to do to take care of this avatar. It affects your spirit. It's why it's called spirits. It affects your spirits in a negative way. So I think it's really important to talk about. There's a lot of nuances and a lot of things that they do to keep you trapped into it.
Well, you know what? Share yours and I'll share mine. I'd love to hear. You said you grew up without alcohol, and until you were 34, you didn't have a drop.
That's correct.
And I assume until you were 34, you thought you never would. What changed? Like, what happened? Because it's unusual. It's like people usually don't start smoking in their 40s. It's kind of like, what happened for you? And how would you describe the change in your life from going to never drinking to then drinking?
Yeah, so I grew up in a Mormon family, and if people know about Mormonism, it's a part of their health code. And some people are a little more strict, especially the way I was raised. We couldn't drink coffee, we couldn't drink tea, no alcohol. It was no smoking, and of course, no drugs. And I'm not talking about prescription drugs, but I'm talking about the drugs. And I never dreamed that I would ever have one sip of alcohol. In fact, as a teenager growing up in this very religious household that had this strict health code, I was always grateful that my parents were like that. There was never alcohol in our house, ever. I never saw one bottle of anything, ever. So I got married when I was really young. I was 18. I married a Mormon man I met in high school. And this is kind of an interesting story, but we got married in the Mormon temple. They have their temples. And on our wedding night, he popped a bottle of champagne on our wedding night. Okay. And I'm like, okay, in the Mormon religion, you get married for time and all eternity. So I was like, I had already made the commitment. I was like in it. I was in it to suffer to the end. And there was not,
Damn.
it wasn't,
sorry. Sorry. Is that something unofficial that is being said, or is that you saying I was in it to suffer till the end?
Well, there's a saying that a lot of I don't think it's just the LDS religion, and I do not want to disrespect it on any level for people who live that. But one of the sayings that was very constant, and it still is in that religion, is called enduring to the end, where you endure to the end. So it's exactly, if you're enduring something, you're suffering something.
Okay, so isn't just you saying it. That's how the religion views it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and it's spoken from the pulpit, and it's actually a very pious thing to say, I'm enduring something. And it's, so that was, but I never felt like it wasn't hard for me to not drink. I didn't surround myself in high school with people like that.
So he popped the champagne and he basically showed you he actually does drink alcohol.
Yeah. And I was 18, he was 20. we didn't live together before we got married. It was, and, so it kind of confused me, but it also, we had 2 beautiful sons together. We ended up being married for 16 years. And then when we split ways, it was in a very agreeable split, because we think how young we were, like, you were not a fully formed adult then, even though you think you are. And growing up the second oldest of 14 kids, I was just like out of the house at 18 with no other guidance. So I stayed in the religion until my marriage ended at 34. And then I divorced at 34. So I divorced at 34. And then what happened is then I met someone even before my divorce was final. And I had my first sip of alcohol. And the reason I did, because I knew it wasn't a sin, because the reason I didn't do it before was because it was always sinful. It was, I was always the perfect kid. You know what I mean? I followed everything to the letter of the law. I mean, as far as that kind of stuff goes, it was always like, we don't drink. It's not good for our health. It's like, I've still to this day never smoked a cigarette. I just am not interested. So that's just always been a part of my personality. So I was like, well, this is not a sin. So I tried to drink a glass of white wine, and I didn't like it at all. So I ended up getting a mixed drink that was fruity, that had vodka in it, that you couldn't taste the vodka. So that was like
classic, a girly drink, right?
Yeah. But over the years, so I ended up marrying the person who introduced me to alcohol for the first time. And we're still married to this day. But for 30 years, because we dated for a few years before we got married, but I drank a lot of alcohol, and it was mostly wine. And if you really think about it, there's all these beautiful places that I've been around the world, like a beautiful vineyard in Tuscany. And it's all romanticized, and there's food that matches the wine, and there's resveratrol in the red wine, and you learn there's certain glasses that you swirl your wine in. I mean, I could tell you a ton about wine. I've enjoyed, many, 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 many glasses. And then basically what happened is 2020 hit, and I would do these big, almost every couple of years, I would take 100 days off in a year. So I would have these big moments where I'd be like, I just need to stop, because it makes me feel better if I stop. And so I would just have these dry 100 days, just sporadically throughout all this time. And it was, and I always felt good. And then it was always an occasion, like a wedding or someone celebrating something. And there was this perfect bottle of this glass of champagne. And I'm like, oh, I just went 100 days. I'm at this wedding, and it's just romantic. And I got caught right back in it. So 2020 hit, and the world, of course, turned sideways for everybody. And I found myself drinking every single night a glass of wine, or maybe 2, every single night. And it put me in a really, I kept going with my business and my herbs and spreading the love, but it was pretty dark. It was pretty dark because I was just numbing myself, but I was justifying it. And it was, then it just reached a point. It's been almost 2 years. And for me, I just woke up one day and I'm like, I'm done. I'm not doing this. And it was extremely easy. I'm not tempted. I know it's not easy for everyone, and and I've talked about this on my channel before, here and there. Also, like when I hit a year, I was like, it's been a year. I thought maybe I'll make a big deal about it and maybe put a video and motivate other people. It never really felt right to do that, but I've kind of mentioned it. Like, this has really made an impact on me. And I always get some pushback as far as people are like, well, I'm happy for you on your journey. That's great. But, my grandfather had a vineyard in Napa, and it's part of our family history, and it's such a beautiful tradition. And I said, look, there's no judgment. I don't judge your journey, but I really believe that I have felt a massive difference in my consciousness journey, because this is not something I just go, oh, I'm going to stop drinking alcohol and I'm going to all of a sudden raise my consciousness. I've been working on this for a long time, but taking that element out was absolutely pivotal.
It's very interesting how at the end, even though our journeys were completely different, we arrived at the same realization. I grew up in an environment and family where alcohol was just part of the culture. And so, it was part of every dinner. It was part of celebrations. It was everywhere. Not to the point where it was, at least not in my family, where it was abused heavily. I would say from my today's perspective, yes, it was abused, clearly, but not in a way that was sort of detrimental to the family health. It was just so normal, and everywhere and everyone. And so, but I grew up as an athlete, and so I wouldn't kind of partake in the more recreational ways of drinking like my friends did. They would just do it like most of the time. I would just work hard, train hard, and then whenever we did go out, I would play hard, and that as well. But it wasn't, and of course, when you're an athlete and the science really started coming in. Like I remember, the first coaches that we had that were really paying attention to the science were saying, hey, if you're going to drink, especially during competition season, just stick to a beer every now and then, but don't go to this, to like the hard stuff. Cause it just puts a dent in your condition and your everything. And then, I ended my career as an alpine skier, and I focused really more on music, and eventually ended up with a record deal. And that's where, I had a band, I had shows, we were going to go on tour. And what I'm noticing is that all the people around me in the music industry drink all the time, during practice, before practice, during practice, after practice, on show days, at sound check, after sound check, before show, during show, after show. So I'm sitting there at the very beginning, even before we released my first album. I'm watching this kind of like from the outside. I'm going, if I'm in this for just a year and I do what is normal here, I'm going to be an alcoholic. And there's no, that's just going to how it's going to go. And then I asked myself, do I need it? I said, no. Is it something that, I can't go without? I said, no, actually not. And so I just said the easiest thing for me to do here is to just walk away completely. And I said, I said to Christine, I said to my wife, I'm out. I'm not doing that anymore. And she was like, cool, let's do it. And then I remember, and this was the, I'll never forget it. I even know I sat on our balcony and I looked at her, and it was about 6 months in, and I said, I feel how in the last weeks, a fog was lifted. There was a fog that I didn't know was there. And I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't a heavy drinker. I would have a few drinks on the weekends or whatnot, but it took 6 months for that haze, for that fog to be lifted, which you don't know if you only stop for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month. You don't know that it's there. You don't stop for long enough. 6 months in, and it only got better from there. I never, ever craved a glass. I never wanted to go back to it. And it's now been, close to 20 years. And what I can say is that what the measurements show, like you said, level of consciousness, is that when you drink a couple glasses of, let's say, wine or beer, your spirits go up. So your level of consciousness temporarily goes up a little bit. That's why what people are, often happier, more joyous. but then it drops below where it was, and it over time it drops more and more and more. And that's just what alcohol does. You taught me something about alcohol that I didn't know. You said people talk about all the positive qualities that alcohol has, but you said something to me last year. You said it's not the truth. What is the truth about alcohol?
I'm trying to decide which piece you're talking about.
About alcohol not having a single redeeming quality, which we think, everybody's talking about, oh, this wine has this, and sherry has this, and beer has this quality.
Well, you look at all the stuff that's out there. Even there's a very famous book called The Blue Zones, and I'm sure many people that listen to this are familiar with it because it's very popular. And interestingly, almost every single group that this guy studied and wrote about in the blue zones are areas around the world where the community has longevity. A lot of these people live to be centurions. They have long, long lives, and they're happy and they're healthy. And the interesting thing is there's only one group, and this is Seventh-day Adventists that are in Southern California, that don't drink alcohol, but every other group around the world, they all drank. Oh, grandma had a whiskey until the day she died at 105. All of them had alcohol as a piece of the longevity. So I think that this is also part of what I believe is the great lie, because then you have this very popular book. You have people who want to live and be healthy. They want to live to old age so they can experience as much as they can. And then they're told, oh, it's okay if you drink a glass of something every day, because look at this group. They drink every single day and even smoke a cigar every single day, or whatever it is that they do that might be a bad habit. But then, of course, if you really were to read the book, it does talk about that, but it basically says the number one reason people live to be very, very old and healthy and happy is connection, human connection, and a feeling of purpose. That is why. But they tuck that alcohol piece in because it's so embedded in our culture, all of our cultures, but it's also one of those things that if you really think about the traditions that people have, we have a hard time letting go of our traditions and the idea that this actually might be healthy for us because it lowers our stress. And if you hear, I have inflammation, I got cancer, I got heart disease, and the doctor will tell you, or your functional medicine doctor will tell you, if you get your stress in check, this is going to help a lot of your issues. So people will drink because it lowers their stress. And it is a temporary lowering of stress. So I think that there's just so many lies about alcohol. It's a neurotoxin. It's not good for you on any level. So it's just an interesting thing to come to after the journey I've had and the journey you've had, because out the other side of it, it didn't take me that long, 6 months to feel what I was feeling, but I would take these great big ginormous breaks. And I also had 34 years of full clarity as a not just a kid, but all the way till I was 34. I knew what it felt like, and it put me right back there almost right away. So
for me, it's also, it's not just a question of can you live a healthy life in a long life and drink alcohol. Like you just said, I don't doubt it. And I had dinner with Dr. Mario Martinez. Christine and I had a famous Blue Zone researcher, and we talked about this too. But this is not what it's about for me. It's like if I'm working on becoming the best possible version of myself, then I ask myself, what is a part of that? And why is it a part of that? And the question is, most people, when they're honest, and they hold on to this idea of, a drink every now and then doesn't hurt, or a glass of wine doesn't hurt. Okay, but why? Like, why do you take that glass of wine? Like, what is it that it gives you? Does it calm you down? Does it relax you? Is it like this factor of feeling comfortable? And okay, so then I'm the same way with shrooms and all the other stuff is, do you know that you can do this all without alcohol, that you have the ability to calm yourself down and feel really relaxed and wonderful by just doing 3 minutes of breath work? You'll have a much bigger effect than any glass of wine could ever give you. And it's really good for you on all levels. So how did you experience that for yourself? I know it wasn't a big deal for yourself, but around you, the people around you, what is their reaction? And how do you see what do you think is the most like persistent argument that people are having around alcohol?
I think it's social pressure. I think people don't feel like they fit in unless they're drinking. And there's people that pressure other people, especially if you try to stop drinking or you opt out of, you can order a non-alcoholic drink at dinner with a bunch of friends just as easy. But here's the kicker. The kicker is you might need to change your friendship group. And that is the hardest thing for people because this is the comfort zone. You might have friends that you've had for decades that you can't imagine not having them in their life. So the thing is you have to dig really deep into deciding what it is that you want out of this life, because it's not about demonizing people who drink alcohol. I have no judgment, zero judgment, but I do know that a lot of people that listen to your channel in particular, they're on a consciousness ascending path. This is, I sometimes will watch a video and I'll skim through the comments and you have an amazing, brilliant group of people who tune in.
I agree.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that this is something that's hard for people to let go of. Especially I've noticed even in people in my age range, I'm at the bottom of the baby boomers, and this is a part of their social structure that's gone back for decades. And what happens if they stop drinking? And it's so funny to watch people that are my age pressuring other people in their friendship group to drink. It's such a strange thing to witness when you've pulled it out completely. I think it's a social thing. Really.
when we moved to Nashville, and I really began entering the music scene here, the music industry, the songwriter industry. Nashville is huge. It's the mecca of songwriting. It's the mecca of country music. And when I got here, there were a few people, older, highly successful songwriters that kind of took me under their wing. But then after a few years, I realized that there were certain circles that I never got in. Like, not that I was pushing hard, but just there was like a barrier. And so I asked one of those seasoned songwriters, and he said, also someone who doesn't drink anymore, doesn't do drugs anymore like he used to. And he said the circles that you talk about, what really connects them is the booze, it's the alcohol, and potentially other drugs. So that's what they do together. They party together. And that's what makes them like such a tight group. And they don't trust people who are not part of that. They don't trust people who don't drink for whatever reason. And he said, you're never going to get into those circles. Don't worry about it. You'll build your own. And he was right. But this is in many industries, this is a fact. Entertainment is probably on top of that. But other circles too. But here we are in the consciousness, spiritual freedom community. And like you, I would suggest that, there's no reason to hang on to alcohol. And here's also something that I ask people is, when did you ever hear the story where someone said, hey, the day that I started drinking, my life got so much better. And it's like, you never hear that story.
It's the opposite. You hear the opposite. Yeah.
You hear the opposite. So let's speak to people who have a certain dependency, okay? And we don't judge that. There's a certain dependency. They depend on alcohol, maybe as a crutch, maybe as a bridge, whatever they do. What could be a way, like a gentle way, from your perspective, to transition? And what could help with that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think that first of all, you need to have a game plan, and you need to kind of there's willpower is like any other muscle. If you have to keep using your willpower, it's going to eventually wear out. So you really have to have a game plan that might include saying, okay, I meet up with the boys, or I meet like every Friday we go for a burger and a beer. And maybe for women, I meet my sister or I meet my girlfriends and we have lunch and we all have a glass of wine. And that's just something that you've been doing. So I think the first thing is you have to really think about the situations where you find yourself, where you really know it's going to be challenging to you. If you opt out of a glass of wine, you're sitting at lunch with all your girlfriends and that's part of what you do. So there's some things that you have to do that way. What I found because there are people who've responded really positive to me and said, I really want to do what you're doing with the no alcohol. Like they communicate with me via email or whatever. What do you suggest? So what I love to suggest to people, because also this is what I do as far as doing herbs and things that help people get back to Mother Nature to help us heal naturally. I really believe that adaptogenic herbs are really powerful here. So you think about what an adaptogen is. It's something that helps your body adapt. And it really can adapt not just to stress, but for women, we have hormonal changes. For many women, almost every single month, our hormones change. And so instead of reaching for something that's going to help, that's pharmaceutical, you could reach for like a cup of holy basil tea. It's a super easy way to start. Or ashwagandha, or rhodiola, or maca root, or suma root. There are some powerful adaptogens that if you just say, okay, this is going to be maybe a little bit painful, people might have some withdrawals. They might have social withdrawals more than even physical withdrawals.
And identity withdrawals, because you're the sommelier, you're the wine expert, you're the bourbon drinker. It's like an identity. You're the beer guy. You're known in your circles, and it's the identity part too. And that doesn't happen overnight. It's a transition, right?
Oh, 100%. And you really kind of have to decide. You really just need to make a decision. And as free thinking humans, this is something you can absolutely control. No one's going to come in and force alcohol down your throat. This is something that you have control over. And then it becomes a point of personal responsibility. You need to say, you know what? I've got this hard thing to do. It's going to change my social circle, probably. And but the thing is, you will find your tribe so tight and beautiful that will like elevate you, and this will get you right where you want to be. Like we can't see through all the hard stuff. We can't see the beautiful stuff that's waiting for us.
Here's an interesting thing that I experienced, Jane, and I'd be curious to hear if it's the same for you. So in the beginning, when I decided not to drink, it was all around me, and I was offered it all the time. In restaurants, the waiter would come and would you like a beer, a glass of wine, all of that. The more time that progressed, now this isn't happening to me at all. And here's the thing, I really think it's an energy thing. So I go into a restaurant and I don't even get the cocktail cart, and they don't even ask me about wine, and they don't even tell me what or beer or anything like that. It's like nobody asks me why I don't drink. Nobody offers me or expects me to. And I really think it's just the energy that isn't even part of my field. So this kind of social awkwardness, or it subsides because you level up, and that you emit that energy then, and it just doesn't happen anymore. Do you have that same experience?
Exactly the same. And I will tell you, my friendship base tightened up during COVID because I was kind of a rebel about it. And I lost a lot of friends, but the real ones have stayed. But yeah, I go into a restaurant with, like I have a big group of sisters. We have a sisters weekend every single year. And just the girls. And we've been doing this for 24 years. And we got together this year in July. All my sisters have alcohol, and it is weird that there was no pressure from my sisters, and there never has been. They're all working on it, and they're all impressed by how easy it is for me to say no, even though it's not easy. But even the servers, it's almost like they don't even see me for the alcohol piece. I experience the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And the more I think about it, I can't even remember the last time. It's like I go into a restaurant and, the server will come and they will just remove the wine glass like automatically. I haven't even said anything, and I'm like, thank you, because I'm not going to need that. But yeah, I just encourage everyone to, like Jane says, give it a strategy. Like, maybe have your ritual, like a cheat day, if you will. It's kind of like with other stuff. And then just notice, how are the 6 days versus the 1 day, right? Also, what I don't miss, Jane, maybe it's the same for you, is alcohol takes a lot of time you drink it, and it sort of makes certain things impossible to do while you drink it. Like, you're not free completely. You can't do things. You can't drive somewhere or do other stuff. And then the
Exactly.
recovery, even if it's just a glass or two, there's still recovery, right?
Oh, think about when you celebrate at a wedding and you're drinking, and how you feel the next day when you wake up. Like, how is that good? Like, we're literally being conditioned to poison ourselves.
To celebrate.
To celebrate. It makes no sense. If people really stop and think about it, it makes no sense. And it also, of all of the drugs in the world that have wreaked more havoc on the human race, not alcohol is at the top. The most violence, the people getting behind the wheel, people with domestic abuse and murders. Like, you really start to dive into this subject, and it's there's nothing good about it.
I agree. And while you said wedding, I just thought about Christine and I were still drinking alcohol when we got married, but we both didn't have a sip of anything on our wedding day or during the reception celebration.
Wow.
We were high on love. We didn't need anything else. I can tell you that.
I love that.
And so that was easy. But I agree with you. I'm not one to use laws for that. I would never outlaw it. I would actually lift bans on all substances. Let people do what they want to do.
I agree.
But if we want to level up and become the best possible version of ourselves, we need to figure out what helps us rise and what keeps us down, and eliminate the stuff that keeps us down. It's that easy, really, right?
Yeah, and it's a no-brainer. Like, you really think about it, you look at even the famous celebrities who, no longer drink and some haven't for a long, long time, and they attribute their success to the fact that they stopped drinking. So I think it's something, especially for the people who it's very traditional and maybe long, rich histories of, your grandpa was a winemaker, or there's a challenge here. Definitely. It's something to kind of really think about, but it reminds me, just now thinking about this, of the kind of famous Ben and Jerry's story, where John Robbins opted out of the family, not Ben and Jerry's, Baskin Robbins, where John Robbins opted out of the family ice cream business because it was so unhealthy. And you know his work, right?
That one in particular, yes.
So it's like, you have to be willing to say, this is not resonating with me, even if this is part of what my family has always done, but then still respecting what your family and what other people do. Like, I have pure respect for however people choose. I certainly don't want to get hit by a drunk driver. That would be something I wouldn't choose. But,
Agreed. No, and I'm also not like I'm not like one of those fanatics that is going to go and lecture everyone over their glass of wine. Not at all. Like, it's your choice. No. I'm not even, that's not part of, it's not a judgment. It's just, if you do ask me, I would share what my experience is. Jane, where can people find you? Where can they find the work that you do, the wonderful, beautiful gifts that you bring to the world?
barlowherbal.com is some of our herbal offerings. And I have a YouTube channel, Barlow Herbal, which some of your followers have come over and checked out what I do. I teach about herbs, and I share a Sunday message of love every Sunday. So, yeah.
Well, if there's only one thing you're going to do today, folks, I would go over do two. I would at least sign up for Jane's newsletter. It's quite famous, actually, and very beautiful. It's not your typical email newsletter. And go and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and just tune in. There's a lot of beautiful Sunday messages there. And while you're at it, check out the website. I mean, we're big fans of your work on all levels.
Thank you.
Madam Herbalista, thank you so much for joining us again today. What a pleasure.
My pleasure, John. Thank you for having me.
Always an Inspired Tribe. We love you. We appreciate you. And we will be back with you again very, very soon.